It's Sunday once again. We're a bit late. It's 12 minutes past 1 in the UK. Just had a bit of sort of like technical issues, but we're here now. And we're actually an hour earlier than our usual 2 o'clock slot. But anyways, it's 9 o'clock or just after 9 in Manila. Hopefully, my fellow New Wavers are sort of like watching us are going to join us today. And also, it's 8 o'clock in the morning in New York. I know a friend of mine who lives in New York who's actually looking forward to this one. So I hope he's watching and joining us. But yeah, I'm so excited about today's drummer guest because he's so awesome. I mean, if you're a Filipino New Waver, Soft as Your Face, that's going to be one of your most favorite sort of like new wave songs. Um, yeah, so and also not only apart from being a drummer, today's guest is more so like he's a big name in the art world. Having a successful career in art, and he's won awards and recognition not just in his hometown in Scotland, but also international awards as well. And he's got a PhD, so like he's got a doctorate degree, and he's just so awesome, really. So I'm really excited about today. So I'm gonna bring him in now. My dear friends, please welcome Professor Ross Sinclair. Hey!
I'm all about it.
Professor Sinclair.
Ross, please.
How are you, Ross?
I'm good, really good. Yeah, really nice to speak to you, and really happy to be part of Ask the Drummer. Fantastic.
Oh, no, thank you so much. I'm really glad that we finally doing this because we tried so like last year. But
Yeah, I know. Just it's just the dates and weekends, and it's all
yeah,
always tricky. But
yeah.
great to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I just want to say hello to my colleague at King B, Neil Barker. He just said hi, Ross. So yeah, so he's joined us live. Thank you so much, Neil. But so how are you at your? It looks like you're in a studio or something. Is that your house or?
Yeah, it's just my little kind of home studio I've got here, where I kind of can do some bits of sort of recording and things, and got lots of bits of equipment, and kind of I just sort of, well, as I'm sure lots of people you speak to tell you, you know, now it's just compared to like the old days, the 80s, whatever. It's just so easy to kind of record stuff at home, and I mean, I do have a kit set up here, but
Oh
it's
wow!
I've stripped it right down to kind of like this sort of basically like bass drum and a snare and a floor tom, and that's kind of it, really. You know, with a sort of one carefully placed microphone.
Oh right.
Like so Phil Spector sort of like do it all with one microphone to keep it simple. So yeah, I just kind of play around here and do bits and pieces, and I mean, I do kind of, and quite a lot of the art things that I do, I kind of use music as part of that as well. So
Yeah,
I'm always kind of pottering about doing little bits and pieces and things. But of course, in contrast to the band vibes of yesteryear, I just do everything myself, one bit at a time. You know, the drums, guitar, bass, whatever. So it takes a long time, but and lacks something of the energy of the band, but it's good fun, lots of good fun.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. Well, I will be asking you about all these about your band and your art as well. But I've got to say this. Do you know, last time I saw you, it was actually the first time I met you.
Yeah.
It was at Glasgow's Pop.
Yeah.
Last year in August, and I've got to say you're actually the highlight for me of Glasgow's Pop. I mean, honestly,
all the fantastic bands and everything that were
all the bands. Well, all the bands were awesome, and you know, but it's like, well, what happened was it's not like the second day; it was the last day of Glasgow's Pop, and I was just really feeling the tiredness and exhaustion. And so, like after Rachel Love performed, I thought, well, I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna leave now. I'm not gonna wait for Mozart Estate. And I was looking for my friend Elaine just to say goodbye to her and
Yeah.
to like I'll see her tomorrow and things like that. But on my way, I went to the hall and then I saw another friend of mine, Dixie, and he sort of like said to me, "Oh, can you take a photo of me and this?" He sort of like pointed this person, and I was sort of like saying, "Well, Dixie's the sort of person who's not really too bothered about having photos, unlike me. I mean, I like having photos with
Yeah.
celebrities and stuff." So I was sort of like surprised. So I said to Dixie, "Who is it?" And then Dixie said, "Oh, that's Stuart Murdoch." Of
Yeah.
it's like who? It's like Stuart Murdoch of Belle and Sebastian. I'd like a photo with them. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Can you take a photo of me as well with it? Even though I didn't really know who he is.
Yeah.
But anyways, so I had a photo with him, and then I saw like thank you. I said thank you, Mr. Murdoch, and then he asked, "What's your name?" But then as soon as he asked it, I saw you walk past. I saw you walk past us, and I was like, "Oh my god, is that him?" And then I said to Mr. Murdoch, "My name's Anne. Thank you so much. Bye," and followed you to the bar.
That is great. Yeah, I saw Stuart kind of around the desk at one point,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's funny. Yeah, I see. Yeah, no, that was really nice when you came up. Yeah, we were just kind of having a drink or whatever at
Yeah.
the
I was
guys.
really surprised. I mean, I wasn't sure. I wasn't really that sure, but then, I don't know if you remember. I was scared. It was so like, "Excuse me, are you Rossi?"
That must be a thing for you, like kind of talking to people who were in bands 30 years ago and now they're 30 years older. What do they look like now?
But yeah, I was so like, I was really glad because when you said that, yes, I am Ross Sinclair, I was like, do you know, um, do you know when you play a computer game and then you
Yeah,
pick an item on a computer game and then all of a sudden it goes ding 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 and then your life sort of like been renewed, your energy level went to
yeah,
goes up to
yeah,
100.
yeah.
It really felt like that when you said you were. I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna stay. I'm gonna stay for Mozart and stay.
All right, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
we were brilliant.
Oh, they're absolutely amazing. And I'm really glad that I saw you because otherwise I would have missed that set.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
and also, speaking of Stuart Murdoch, I just want to say because I've seen on social media that he has been sort of like having health problems
Yeah,
lately. So, I just want to wish him well and
yeah,
please get well
absolutely. Yeah.
soon. Yeah,
Yeah,
get
it's
well
such
soon,
a
Mr.
shame
Murdoch.
they've had to cancel dates and things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it'd be great. Actually, the new album came out yesterday. Um, they have a new album that's, I think it came from the same sessions, recording sessions as the previous ones. But I ordered it from Monorail, in Glasgow, which I think,
Yeah, yeah,
but it hasn't arrived yet. So I guess it was only released on Friday. So I'll probably get it through the post on Monday because I live a little bit out of the city. So
yeah,
not so handy. So, but yeah, I see a lot of people saying it's a really fantastic album. So I really look forward to hearing
yeah.
that.
Well, I'm now sort of like getting into Belle and Sebastian because, like I've mentioned, I'm not really familiar with the music, but
Yeah,
I'm hoping, I wish him well because I'm hoping to sort of like see them live someday,
yeah,
when
they're
they go back
fantastic.
touring.
They're like a
Yeah,
sort of Glasgow institution. They've been going for such a long time, and
yeah,
just had such fantastic musicians kind of in the band and previous members of the band. And it's funny actually, as you know, I work at the art school in Glasgow, and recently in the last few years we've moved into this new building, which is called the Stowe Building, and interestingly, it used to be called Stowe College, and that was where members of Bell and Sebastian went, and where in fact this. What was it called? The label Electric Honey, I think, and where they sort of they arranged to record the first album, Tiger Milk, through the kind of course they were on.
okay.
It was run by Alan Rankin from the Associates, who sadly
Oh,
died in the last
yeah,
few.
yeah, yeah. That's really
So
sad. Yeah,
when
yeah.
I moved in, I saw this plaque that was in a storeroom somewhere, and it was like the sort of Stowe College Hall of Fame, and all these people on it. And the last entry at the bottom was Bell and Sebastian, 1992 or something like that.
Oh
So
wow.
it was really,
Oh
Uh,
wow, it's brilliant. Well,
anyway, so,
anyways, yeah. So, I wanted to say hello to Monty Mendigoria. Monty's got a podcast as well. He hasn't been doing it lately. I think it's because he's been so busy. But he does. It's all about new wave, and like I've mentioned, Filipino new wave is soft as your face, awesome. So, hello, Monty. Thanks for joining us. And also, Aiden O'Rourke, who's my tech support, he said, no tech problems now. Picture and sound all A-OK, which is so good. So, that's good to hear. So, yeah, Ross, instead of Professor Sinclair, so Ross, welcome to Ask the Drummer.
thank you.
Episode, episode 65 is all about you, Ross Sinclair. So yeah, so the Soup Dragons, they're actually sort of like known as band from Bells Hill.
Yeah.
But I found out from Jim Collett when I saw him last time in Straven that apart from Sean Dixon, none of you are actually from Bells Hill.
Yeah, no, we were. Me and Shashil lived in this other across the other side of the city, and Jim's from Motherwell, basically. So, yeah, but okay, in saying that, I mean, a lot of because that scene was so strong in Bells Hill, we were there a lot and played a lot of gigs there. There was this crazy place called the Hat and Rig Hotel, which was this like a really sort of straight kind of hotel place, and but people like Sean and Douglas and others would put on these nights there and have lots of bands and things. So it was a
Oh,
really there's quite a few good nights there, and so yeah, it's funny, yeah, but
yeah, yeah. Well, I have been to Bells Hill because
yeah,
after class,
really,
after after Glasgow's pop that Sunday before I went back to Manchester, I did a
really,
sort of like an afternoon trip to Bells Hill,
uh,
but I think it was quite unfortunate because I went on a Sunday afternoon and
yeah.
it just looked dead. It just looked like
Um,
there was nothing there.
well, I think to be honest, it looked dead 30 years ago as well. And I think in a way that was the thing. I think that there was so little happening that it was just amazing that all these folk, kind of got together. And I think, Norman Blake and Douglas and Sean and, all these other guys and lots of other guys as well who sort of didn't quite get into bands that sort of made it. But I think they had to make a sort of scene for themselves, as everybody did at that point. The 80s in the UK was, pretty kind of. You see images of it now, and it looks more like the 1940s or something. It's just like very grey, very dark. And Glasgow was very dark and grey, and so I think there was a real sense there that if you wanted anything to happen, you had to do it
It
yourself,
was, yeah.
really. And I think, you know, just more generally, I think, labels like Postcard and Fast Products in Edinburgh, in the early 80s had sort of shown that you didn't have to go to London to do stuff. You could do some things up in Scotland. And, that was really kind of exciting. We were all into those labels
Yeah.
and bands that were on them.
Yeah, but this is according to Wikipedia that you're actually born in a place called Bearsden. Bearsden?
Yeah, well, I was actually born in Stobhill Hospital, which is, and then my folks, they live in Springburn, which is a sort of area in the kind of north of the city. And then over the years, we sort of graduated out to there, sort of Annie's Land for a while, which is sort of out west. And then, yeah, the last years of my school and stuff was in
Yeah.
Bearsden, yeah, which is
Is
a
it
really,
is it
sorry?
still Glasgow? Is it still part of Glasgow or?
It's a good question. Yeah, it's just outside actually because all the years of having to get taxis home from gigs, there was a bit where it said this is the boundary of Glasgow, and if you went beyond that, you had to pay a kind of an additional charge, boundary fee sort of thing. So
Oh,
although it was still, 2 miles away from my house, quite often we just get out there because otherwise there's an extra kind of 40% or something. So yeah, it's just on the edge of the city, but um, it's it's quite. It has a reputation for being quite a kind of posh area, a Bear's Den, you know, it's quite sort of fancy, but unfortunately, I didn't live in the fancy bit. I just lived in like normal. So, and actually didn't even go, although she lived, it was only a couple of miles away, but we didn't go to the same school. So I didn't know him until after that, you know. I mean, I went to art school when I was quite young. So I kind of moved into Glasgow when I was kind of 17, 18.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was kind of all through the Soup Dragons, I was the only one who had a flat in Glasgow. They all still lived at home. So like when we toured, like when My Bloody Valentine supported us, for example, they would always stay on the floor in my flat, sort of thing, you know, in Glasgow, because no one else had a flat. So
Yeah, but have you always been into sort of like music, or like growing up in Brisbane? Are you like?
yeah, I had a kind of I had an older pal, a guy called Neil Minges, who we sort of started our first band together, a band called Gods for All Occasions. We were in fact playing a gig at the art school when I met Sean for the first time, he came to see us. And after the gig, we kind of had a chat, and he said, "Oh, I'm trying to get this other band started, and can you play the drums?" Because I was singing and playing guitar in this other band with Neil. And I said, "Yeah, I can kind of play the drums." So that was the start of the Soup Dragons. Well, there was Shashil had put up an advert in a music shop in Glasgow, and so there was all kind of things happening. But yeah, with this pal Neil Minges, he was a couple of years older, so he was, and his mum kind of looked after me a little bit, and I used to go there after school, and so we went to lots of gigs together, and really were into music. And in the
Yeah.
late 70s, there's a venue in Glasgow called the Apollo, which was a kind of biggish sort of venue, like I think maybe 4,000 maybe, or quite big.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so there we went to see like the Clash, the Damned, the Stranglers, Devo, Susie and the Banshees, all these kind of just
Oh,
after
wow.
punk. Well, I mean, obviously Stranglers and the Clash and things are punk, but this is sort of 79, 80. So it was
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
after that first wave. So really from there on in, me and Neil would go to all these gigs and then start going to different clubs in Glasgow and things to see other bands, you know, not such big name bands, but other things, you know, in the early 80s. So yeah, he was like a sort of older brother kind of thing, and we went to do all these music things together. And then he had a big room he lived in a sort of in the attic space of his house. So we just gathered stuff together, and there was a drum kit there and some amps and guitars and things. So a bit like my room is here now, not so many guitars, but
Not so many. Yeah. Yeah.
just muck around. And you know, out of that came this sort of first band, Gods for All Occasions. And
Yeah.
yeah, that was sort of
You said you were playing guitar though. So when Sean Dixon asked you if you could play the drums, can you really at the time? Do you really?
not really, not really. Probably can't really play the drums very well, to be honest. So, no, I mean, of course, at that time, that would be kind of, I can't remember, it was end of 84 or beginning of 85. Excuse me. And of course, the Jesus and Mary chain had just started at that point. I think I'd seen one early gig of theirs at the venue in Glasgow I think with Primal Scream and another creation band, Meat Whiplash. I think that might have been Primal Scream's second gig or something. Anyway, but yeah, of course, the Mary Chain had the sort of Bobby playing stand
Bobby
up.
Lashley, yeah, yeah.
So obviously, you think kind of, oh, how hard can that be, sort of thing. So actually, the first Soup Dragon sort of rehearsal, I was kind of standing up, just doing floor tom and snare sort of thing. But actually, it's pretty limited, that sort of thing. And of course, works brilliantly in the Mary Chain. But, you know, as soon as I started, I sat down and my right leg just started kind of going like this sort of thing. It was, I don't know, it was just became this sort of, that sort of first few sort of Soup Dragon singles, that bass drum is just like, because I couldn't do anything else, it just kind of, it went kind of like automatically kind of thing. So
It was like really
anyway,
natural. It was
yeah,
natural for you to do that. But did
yeah,
you not like go for lessons after that, or you didn't?
absolutely not. No, I mean it was strange because the beginning of the band, they had, I mean, as I say, Shashil had put this advert up, I think, in McCormick's, which was a fantastic music store in Glasgow, gone now, sadly. And Sean had been in some other bands in Bells Hill, and a lot of them had done all this crazy busking thing. They used to busk, play on
Yeah, yeah. In
Glasgow.
Glasgow, yeah.
Yeah, and it was really a sort of event. There was in the end there was a couple. Jim, as far as I recall, there was sort of two sets of them, and one had like Jim and Joe McAlinden from Superstar and Linden and things, and they were kind of in a sort of orchestra at school or something. They were all really good, and like Jim can play the clarinet, and he was really good. Jim's a fantastic musician in all kinds of ways, and I don't know. Maybe there's a couple of groups of them, but there was like 15 or 20 of them. I don't know how they made any money, but they sounded fantastic. And they were kind of around everywhere. So I think, Sean had been doing a bit of that, and Shashil had been looking for something. And, so I think they'd had maybe, there was a couple of other folk kind of came in and went and things in that first few weeks. But I think pretty quickly when I got there, it sort of felt like this was a sort of setup, and it kind of really worked. And after a couple of rehearsals, I think probably when I sat down and stopped standing up trying to be a Bobby Gillespie, it felt a lot better. And the songs were just so kind of straightforward and punchy, and it just all kind of really clicked together. And there was another guy called Ian Whitehall who was playing guitar at the start, who I think was a pal of Shashil's. But I think I didn't remember this until we were kind of meeting a bit to discuss this new record. But I think Jim remembered that, in fact, we got this. Our first gig was supporting Primal Scream at this club Splash One in Glasgow. This really fantastic club that just lasted a sort of year, sort of 85, 86. And it was like had bands like Sonic Youth, Wire, Pastels, June Brides.
Wow.
23 Skidoo, just so many fantastic bands. And the first gig was our first gig was supporting Primal Scream, where Sean worked in this clothes shop called Flip. I think there's still one in Newcastle. It doesn't exist in Glasgow anymore. Sort of second-hand American clothes. I think he only worked there for a couple of weeks, but Bobby came in. I think Sean had given him a tape, and Bobby came in one day and said, "Look, we're doing this gig on Sunday. Do you want to support us?" And so we always used to go to this one pub called the Griffin, which was the sort of local music sort of place on a Friday night. And I remember we all went along, and Sean said, "Oh, Bobby, well, he asked us if we wanted to support them at Splash One like next week." It was like a week away or something. We were like, "Oh, the hell, all right then." But poor Ian, who played guitar, I think Jim remembers he was away on holiday or something and couldn't do it. So Jim, who's a great player, he kind of came in and quickly learned the songs and played the gig. And then the gig was absolutely fantastic. It all just sort of came together and sounded totally brilliant. In fact, there's a bits of video of it that I think Jim Lambie, who's an artist in Glasgow, and was later, he was in Boy Hairdressers, who was a sort of Teenage Fan Club incarnation just before Teenage Fan Club with Norman and Jim played vibraphone or something on that. I don't know.
On YouTube? Is it available on YouTube or something?
I think you can get it. It was, I think it was unearthed. I don't know if you've seen, there's a great film made by a guy called Grant McPhee called Teenage Superstars.
Yeah. I'm trying to get hold of that one because it's not available on YouTube. Because
I think I have a DVD of it somewhere, and I'll look for that. And if I've got one, I can send you one or whatever. I'm sure Grant.
That's brilliant.
I think from the research that Grant did on that, he found some clips that Jim had done. I have seen them. Yeah, it's great. It's just like one handheld video kind of thing. But you can feel the energy and the sort of power and the kind of. And of course, that's when Primal Scream were very jangly and melodic and quite kind of not light sound, but so we were quite punchy and punky in comparison. So it was a good gig.
You were younger as well, weren't you? You were younger than sort of like Primal Scream, or
Yeah,
more or less the same age as them.
a wee bit younger. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
I think Bobby had been around a bit before that. He'd been in the Wake, and yeah, I guess they're maybe not 5 years older. Maybe I mean we were all 17 and 18. I mean we were really young.
yeah, yeah,
I guess they were probably in their early 20s or something, a wee bit older.
yeah. Well, those sort of like difference, that age difference when you're a
Yeah,
17-year-old, that's
no,
really sort of like a huge,
you're
a
right.
huge
No, it
difference.
absolutely is. And actually, I mean, Splash One, excuse me, which was run by half a dozen sort of guys in Glasgow. I mean, Bobby was sort of part of that, but I think there's a lot of different guys, Derek and Grant, and lots of them. But I think it was really great because they, rather than having a DJ, they just did tapes because no one could be arsed actually DJing because everyone
Oh,
wanted to dance and have fun and have a drink. So they just played these tapes, which became a bit legendary. And, they played them from the DJ booth. But they were like the totally fantastic, cool kind of selection of sort of punk, new wave, garage, 60s psychedelia, 60s garage stuff, 50s things, even rock and roll,
yeah,
esoteric stuff, krautrock things, and it was a real, for us 17 and 18, that was great. You'd hear lots of good stuff on the Splash One tapes, and
yeah.
uh, you know, just
That must be sort of like worth a fortune now if anyone's got a copy of those. So like Splash
yeah,
One.
maybe. Actually, what folk do have is they made lots of great posters, actually, which I think there's maybe I put one on the sleeve of the new album.
Oh yeah, yeah,
There's lots. They were quite distinctive posters that they used to. They knew a guy who screen printed them. It's just like always like A4, one color, but really kind of always dynamic. And you just see them. They would, fly post them up in Glasgow like just a week before the gig. So you just see
yeah.
them everywhere, and everybody used to peel them all off because. I have maybe I don't know. I have a folder with like maybe 10 or 12 or something in it, but they're
Yeah,
really nice, all just similar looking, but kind of different colors, and
yeah, yeah.
they were. So that's a sort of souvenir. But yeah, the tapes. Actually, I do have a tape that of that I think Bobby gave Sean of a live recording of the Soup Dragons gig. I think Primal Scream
Oh,
recording theirs from the mixing desk of the
yeah.
PA, and it's got the Soup Dragons gig on it, and then Bobby just filled it with songs from the tape that was on that night. So I suppose
I
that's a
see.
record. Haven't seen it for
Okay.
years, but remember seeing it somewhere with
Maybe
Bobby
it's
kind of rounded handwriting on it, kind of thing.
maybe it's something sort of like future release or something. Someone will mix it,
Yeah, yeah, maybe, yeah,
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 but I just want to ask you, sort of like going back to your first band, which is Gods for All Occasions. Now, I found this out on Google that there's another member of that band, and
yeah,
it's Raymond McGinley of
yeah,
Teenage Fan Club. I was
yeah,
like, oh my god, that's like because I'm quite late to the Teenage Fan Club appreciation society. But I just love them. I'm actually so like obsessed with them at the moment. I just
yeah,
love all the albums that they've made. I think I've only got the only one I haven't got one now is the first one,
yeah,
uh, which is I think is a Catholic Education or something like
yeah.
that. But
It's
yeah,
great.
all the
Yeah,
other all the other albums.
the
So what was
poets.
it like? What was it like with Raymond McGinley? Was he the singer?
No, he was a guitar player just like he is now. Obviously he's a singer now as well and things, but no, he was a guitar player. He was friends with this pal Neil at Glasgow University.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's how they met there with a sort of similar interest in music and things. And yeah, Raymond was brilliant. I mean, in retrospect, I don't think uh, Gods for All Occasions was necessarily the best band in the world, and I was writing a lot of the songs and singing, so that's I hold my hand up, you know. But it was still, you know, it was really exciting, and Raymond was great as he is now. I mean, he used to
Yeah,
when we put all these songs together, he would come up with lots of really interesting kind of guitar lines and lots of interesting ideas. So, I mean, in a way, it was very much like he has been kind of over the years that just fantastic.
wait,
Sorry,
is that you? I'm sort of like wondering, is that you or
yeah,
me?
sorry. I think it's folk messaging me saying, "Yeah, oh, great, it sounds good, whatever." But sorry, uh, um, it's I don't know how to.
Oh, it's all right. I'm sure it's not going to go on forever.
You know, I
No,
don't know how to turn it off on my computer. Wait a minute. Uh, right,
it's
if it keeps going on, I'll go back in and try and quit
yeah. No,
messaging.
that's all right. I'm just
Anyway,
sort of like
no, Raymond was fantastic, and you know, I think he was always destined for kind of bigger things. You know, he's such a great player. You know, such a great
yeah, yeah,
underrated. I think guitar player. You know, he's because of course, in a way, Fan Club is all about the songs and all these fantastic songs that the three of them have
yeah,
written over the years. But you know, as a guitar player, I think Raymond is really kind of underrated. Really fantastic guitar player, and you know, I think you know, I know even you know, like Jay Mascis from Dinosaur Jr. You know, he sometimes does. I've heard him doing a couple of cover versions of like "Everything Flows," and
oh,
just live on sort of YouTube or whatever. And you know, I can see he's sort of really kind of enjoying that the way. It just Raim's got a great way of doing solos where he's not really picking out all the kind of, he just is really sort of strumming it and it's really sort of fluid.
yeah.
Anyway, fantastic. But
So, so you're really, I mean, you're more of a guitarist than a drummer because I can tell maybe you started
yeah,
out as
yeah, maybe that's oh no, maybe we should stop the interview now.
no, but yeah, we've heard the sort of like the beginnings of the Soup Dragons with your first gig with Primal Scream. But one thing I would like to ask you is, did you know that you're actually massive in the Philippines with that soft as your face?
Well, no, I mean it was I think I hadn't seen Sean for years, and I was in London doing some kind of external examining of part of my academic life, and I think I don't know whether I can't remember what year this was, whether Facebook had just started or I'd just gone on to it or something. But I saw Sean there, and we kind of hooked up, and went down when I was down in London. We met for a coffee or whatever. And I probably hadn't seen him for 10 years or something. So that was really nice. And yeah, it was through chatting through him. I think he was sharing some things with us and saying, wow, guys, look at this. We're sort of this band covering the song. And it's like, so I really had no idea actually. So tell me more. I'm keen to know. Why?
I think it's like I mentioned earlier that every Filipino new wave, because for us, the Soup Dragons is like part of those sort of like new wave in the 80s. And that song particularly, and your cover version of Our Lips Are
Oh,
Sealed
yeah,
as
yeah.
well, that was just absolutely amazing. But I don't know why, but even up to now, you know, if you actually sort of like listen to, there's an online radio station that because it's not sort of like a live now or sort of like a regular radio station, but there's one called WXB 102, and they used to play it. They used to play like Soft as Your Face, and I don't know what it is, but it's just every single Filipino new waver loved that. They just loved that song so much. And the video, I think Sean Dixon actually so like posted a few years ago. There's like a video of the original video
Yeah,
for that song, and it just looks amazing. All four of you with this little girl,
yeah.
and I mean, have you? What happened to her? Who's the little girl? Are
I
you
don't know.
still
I
in
mean,
touch?
I think at that point, you know, we can some of the videos we had quite a lot to do with, and Sean shot a lot of Super 8 stuff and like Can't Take No More video, for example. It was just all put together from Super 8 things. And some of the
Yeah,
other ones, uh, Head Gone Astray, I think, which was also shot on film. That one, Soft as Your Face, I think it was made by a woman called Laurie Baker, I think her name was. And I think it was also shot at the Royal College of Art or something. This is just a big sort of white space. I'm maybe
yeah,
getting a couple of the videos kind of mixed up, but that one had a bit more money spent on it, but it was probably one of the videos we sort of had the least to do with actually. We just sort of showed up and kind of did the sort of performance thing. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think
I forgot to look it up, but was it sort of like a hit in the UK as well? Was Soft as Your Face a big hit here?
not a big hit. No, I mean, like at that time, it was, as you know, I mean, it was still extremely hard to get records kind of into the charts. So a lot of these singles, relatively speaking, we were selling quite a lot of copies of them, but struggling to get into the sort of top 40 sort of thing. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think that one, it maybe kind of made it into the very lower reaches of the charts kind of thing, but not by any means a kind of hit. So no, but yeah, it's funny. It's
yeah,
funny, of course, all these videos that we did, like most bands, okay, some of them you might have had like a VHS copy somewhere that the director gave you somewhere, but most of the times they just sort of happened, of course, and the like all things with film and video things, all the kind of masters of things live somewhere else, or in some vault somewhere, or digitally or whatever. So it's funny, like when we don't have copies of them all, and it's just some of them we hadn't seen for years, and they sort of then somebody has a copy that maybe taped from a sort of TV program, the chart show, or one of these programs it was on, and it suddenly pops up again. Though in
yeah,
fact, one for one of the singles, Majestic Head, it was called, that we hadn't seen for years, and I had a copy of it, but when we finally got to try to transcribe it digitally, sort
yeah.
of,
So yeah, yeah.
the tape had been ruined. It was so old, the
Oh
VHS,
no.
all
Oh,
so
yeah. Well,
so.
my colleague Neil Barker said that Soft as Your Face so like went in on number 66
All
and
right, okay,
Can't Take No More got to 65. So
okay, okay. So
and I
the
also
very lower reaches of the charts. Yeah, I don't know why I sort of remembered it's maybe like 45 or something. I think actually because we had a really good fan base, what used to happen was that they had a really high midweek chart. The charts, they sort of, I don't know if they still do that, but they have a sort of midweek. I think they
yeah,
do actually. So you have a sort of, I don't know when they used to do them, sort of weekends, Wednesday, and there was a midweek position. And I think because we had lots of really, strong fans, they would buy it on the first day or two it was released. So the midweek position would be really high. But of course, that was like your whole fan base, and they'd bought it also the rest of the week. When everybody was buying Kylie or kind of, Duran Duran or something. Uh, it was all over for us. So I think, yeah, my memory is we used to have these really great sort of midweeks, like 35 in the charts or something, but then it'd be like 65 by the time the weekend happened. So, yeah, thanks for reminding me of that.
well, I also want to say hello to Graham. Graham Marston has just said hello to you, Ross. So I think Graham lives in Stockport, actually, where I live. So
Really?
thank you for joining. Yeah, thank you for joining us, Graham. And also Neil said that great songs, and he remembers seeing the videos on the chart show on Channel 4, and he also bought both those singles on the first day. But I've got to sort of like say this one here from if I could, yeah, there you go, from Last Night from Glasgow, which is a very very good. It's an amazing label. If anyone saw, like, you should or looking for a subscription to a record label, Last Night from Glasgow, I think is highly recommended. So this one here, it's got the which one there,
Yeah.
the Raw TV products. This is the latest one from the Soup Track. Yeah, this it's yeah, that's right. And the color, absolutely
Oh,
amazing. Oh
looks
no,
like
you have.
it.
Oh, you've got the white one. Mine is actually blue, which is exclusive to Last Night from Glasgow. I think
Yeah,
the white one.
blues. That's a nice one. I think there's also a red one and a green one. I think as
Yeah,
well.
yeah. But this one highly recommended. So, like to any Soup Dragons fans out there, I'm sure a lot of Filipinos have already sort of like ordered it, and
Yeah,
quite a
well,
lot of
it's a great label. Last Night from Glasgow, and we first started talking about doing something a couple of years ago, and there were some labels in London that were quite keen to do it, and but I don't know. We don't. So I had done an album with Last Night from Glasgow of my own things a
yes.
couple of years ago, and
I'm gonna say yeah. Snap.
I
I've
saw
got
that.
that one as well.
But anyway, so I knew them, and actually, I had done a cover for a band called Teen Canteen, which was the
All
first
right.
release on Last Night from Glasgow, and I kind of knew them from years ago and did the sleeve with them, and so I kind of knew them. So anyway, we ended up doing it with Last Night from Glasgow because I think we just wanted it to kind of. It seemed really nice to keep it local in Glasgow, and rather than it being a kind of London thing,
Yeah.
and also I think just with that album, it was. Because things happened really kind of fast in the Soup Dragons at the beginning, as I think for a lot of bands, always in those days. But for some reason, we never. It took us quite a while to do our first album. This is our art,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and we always sort of felt that there had been a kind of a missed opportunity where we should have done an album like maybe in '86 or something, after maybe 3 singles and still with that very sort of punky, energetic early sound. But for whatever reasons, that sort of didn't happen. And there were a couple of compilations that came out, one in the States and one in France, of all places, that were kind of a combination of a sort of compilation of the first few singles. But so in a way with this album, we kind of almost kind of wanted to do something that might have been the kind of the missing link of a kind of album, that the first album that never really came out at the time, that had
Yeah.
that sort of really raw energy about it, and that sort of first phase of the band, which we felt kind of maybe hadn't been that well sort of documented in LP form. Anyway, all those singles are great, and they sort of
Yeah. Yeah.
8 or 9 singles sort of chart
Yeah.
that. We hadn't really. By the time we got to do the first album, the band had changed a wee bit again, and we were kind of looking for a different sound, and it had different textures on it. Whereas this one's a bit more like boom, 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 boom.
Well,
Which I
I remember. I remember when Jim McCulloch posted it on Facebook that I think he said something like "talking soup." And I got really excited when I saw that post. I was like, "Oh my god, they're gonna do a reunion!" And I think he said something. No, we're eating soup or something. But anyways, I've actually got all the. I managed to get copies of all those singles, the earlier ones, and
nice.
um, uh, and the only one that I haven't got is I think it was the first one, the EP. Can't remember what it's called, but that was the only one that I
Yeah,
don't have.
Sun is in the Sky. It's
Yeah,
called.
that's the yeah, that's the only
Yeah,
one I haven't got a copy of. But yeah, for us, so like non-British, like because as you know, I'm originally from the Philippines. I mean, now I think most people know where the name the Soup Dragons came from this sort of like British kids program. Did
yeah.
you ever thought like sit together, like all four of you, and saying, okay, we're gonna call ourselves this? Was there like a vote, or sort of like saying, what are we going to call ourselves? Oh, I know, this British TV program.
God, that's a really good question, Anna. I honestly can't remember. I honestly can't remember. I mean, at that time, Shishio was. He had this fanzine called Pure Popcorn, and he had done a few issues of that. and that was typical sort of fanzine at the time, with lots of collage stuff and everything done on a typewriter and lots of pictures cut
Oh
out
yeah,
from
yeah,
things. So
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe she would be able to say it, but I can maybe imagine it might have come out of his fanzine.
Oh,
I
but
remember, no, I don't remember ever sort of.
but you weren't like fans of the kid show.
Not particularly. I mean, I think at that time there was a bit of a thing for sort of. There definitely was a bit of a thing for sort of 60s, particularly kids' TV shows and things, and a bit of.
Oh, yeah.
Well, Belle and Sebastian is a sort of kids' TV program sort of thing, and
Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, yeah. Am I remembering that wrong? No, no, I think it definitely is. And there were lots of other ones, and they're slightly kitsch, slightly I
Yeah.
suppose they were a bit twee, but no, I don't remember a great deal of discussion
Oh,
about
that's all right. Yeah, but at least we know where the name came from, anyways. Neil said that he doesn't think that the first EP got a proper release, so he
yeah,
hasn't got a copy. So maybe it's one of those rare ones.
yeah.
And
It didn't get
yeah,
it didn't get officially released. Yeah, it was.
yeah,
Yeah, it didn't kind of come out the way we wanted to, and there were some sort of issues with it, so we didn't kind of release it.
yeah.
But they had been all pressed, so over the years some have kind of leaked out, which they kind of weren't supposed to. But it does exist out there. But
Yeah. Well,
I've got,
it's on
but
Discogs anyway, so
of course, like everything.
yeah. Well, Graham said that his "Soft as Your Face" 12" is it's a double groove record. I've
Oh
got that one as well. Like
yeah,
so, yeah. But it's always I can't remember now. It's always with those double groove, you always end up just playing the same thing, and you're trying to sort of like get the
yeah.
other one, and it won't play.
Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, I think that time, sort of in the mid 80s, mid late 80s, it seemed to be I think it was that moment where in the UK anyway, they had relaxed the sort of chart return rules. So if you had different versions of things, they all counted as sort of chart things. So
Oh
if
yeah,
you
yeah,
had like four versions of a single, they all counted somehow.
yeah.
Obviously, clearly with the memories of getting to number 66 in the charts. It never does into that one. But yeah, I remember doing these double grooves and picture discs and
Yeah,
oh God, live stuff and all kinds of different things. That was,
yeah.
which is actually, and it's nice now to look back on those because they're all quite
They're
idiosyncratic.
collectible. Yeah, collectible
And
now.
give me a chance to do more covers and things
Yeah,
for
yeah.
them all. So
But well, this is the one that I'm so like, I don't know if it's so like I shouldn't ask, but anyways, you left the band, and I was saying to you earlier before we came online. I mean, it's no secret. Anyone who knows me actually, so like, I love "Soft as Your Face." I love that bit because that was like when I was in the Philippines as
mm,
a teenager. But the other sort like the Soup Dragons, when you left, that was actually the time when when they released "I'm Free."
yeah,
That was the time that I really got into it because at that time I was living in the Middle East. I had money. I was like, I was free. I was all like, to do whatever I want. And it's so like I used to go to clubs every weekend, and that was like the song for me. That was like my music. So, what I'm going to ask you is because by that time you already, left the band and things, and that was that time when they made it big in America. It
yeah.
was like massive in America. So, did you ever sort like regret leaving? Or can I ask you about that thing, or do you want to talk?
Sure. I mean, it was, I mean, from one way of looking at it, you could say that, I was kind of, in the band for like 5 years or something, all the early years, all the tours of all the tiny little venues everywhere. And then, like, kind of, it felt like 10 minutes after I'd left, they were on Top of the Pops doing Anne-Marie and stuff. I mean, I suppose it's only human that there's probably a bit of kind of regret there. But I mean, I didn't regret kind of, when I met Sean, first of all, I think I mentioned maybe I was playing in with God's for All Occasions. We were doing this gig at the art school where I had already started studying at the Glasgow School of Art. So I was in first year, and my band played in the Vic bar, the student union bar, and I met Sean at the end of that, and that's where we first talking about could I be part of the Soup Dragon sort of thing. So I had already started art school, and I did a couple of years of art school, and then the Soup Dragons got so successful, I suppose, and were so busy that I had to take some years out, like leave of absence, kind of deferring for a few years. And I kind of did that repeatedly. And in, I think, 89 or something, I kind of went back again and said, oh, can I have another year off kind of thing? And they said, oh, wait a minute, and sort of checked. It wouldn't have even been on the computer then, probably. It would have been kind of probably looking at some old ledger kind of thing. Oh, let me have a look, son. And they said, oh, wait, you can't have another year because you have to finish an undergraduate degree in 7 years or something. And I think I'd already had like 3 years off or something. So basically, I had to kind of decide whether I was going to go back to art school and continue with art or leave completely and go with the band. And, at that time, the band was kind of going in a sort of direction where the album after I left, it turned out to be a Love God, I guess. I had sort of worked with Sean on that, and we'd sort of programmed the drums together, sort of on a computer, sort of drum machine sort of thing. And then I'd sort of played live cymbals and stuff over the top of that. And that was fine, but I didn't, from a drumming perspective, to get back to Ask the Drummer, I mean, the programming and everything was fine. And, I had a couple of little drum machines that I was kind of working on and doing things. But it wasn't quite the same, as doing everything live, So what happened was actually I went back to art school. That would have been in like the sort of autumn, September or something for that start of the whatever academic year it was. And I remember, I think we had arranged, if I remember it rightly, that Paul Quinn would sit in for me for a kind of UK tour or something, 20 days or whatever it was. And he would do that while I kind of went back to art school and sort of decided whether I thought I could kind of do both things at the one time. But I think after going back, I kind of realized that if I was going to do either of the things properly, I would have to concentrate on one thing. So that was when I thought, really, I'd really loved the years of being in the band and, traveling around and recording and doing the videos and doing all the covers and everything, which I always and but I think I just felt for me the next few years was going to be about kind of art and visual art rather than concentrating on the music. So in the end, that decision wasn't too difficult for me, really. But yeah, it did. It was interesting to kind of see them on top of the box.
And
that was the sort of, because all the records we did, you'd always do another version without the vocals on it in case you had to do it on live TV or whatever. And, it's a bit of a sort of joke or something almost. So then, like a year later, they were suddenly trying to. I mean, it's interesting that I remember even, in the very early days, we would, a tour manager that we had, a guy called Chris, we would sometimes stay with him in London in between tours and things. And he lived somewhere Dagenham or something near this old Ford motor factory.
Yeah.
In a tower block. And anyway, we would stay there sometimes to save money. But he had a video, I remember, of Stones. It's called Stones in the Park. It's the Hyde Park concert, which was like, you know, the day after Brian Jones had died, or the week after, or something. And they did this free concert in Hyde Park, which I think had like 500,000 people at it. But
Oh,
anyway, it was the
yeah.
first gig by Mick Taylor, you know, who was a guitar player who came in the early 70s, fantastic player. He only played a few years in the Stones. I think he came into the Stones as a sort of teetotal vegetarian and left as a sort of full blown heroin addict sort of thing, like 4 years later or something. So anyway, but it was Mick. It was his first gig with the Stones. So it's really loose, but really nice actually. Really kind of messy. But they do a version of "I'm Free" on that, which was I think it was the B side of Ruby Tuesday or something, or one of those sort of
Yeah,
60s singles.
yeah.
Um, and it's a really kind of loose sort of jam version sort of thing. And I remember watching that on the video, and we all absolutely loved that. And, you know, I think that definitely planted a seed in Sean's mind, you know, that sort of to do another
Wants
version
to
of
do, yeah, yeah. Oh,
well,
that's,
it's great. I'm only, do you know what? Actually, I feel it's a shame that that you know a lot of bands have like one song that they break through with, you know, and it's kind of if it's one that you've written, I guess that's the one that pays off the mortgage and enables you to keep sort of working as a musician and things. And I feel
yeah,
it's just a shame that that song wasn't one that the band and Sean, who wrote, you know, most of all the songs, it's a shame it wasn't one he'd written, you know, because that'd have been much better kind of financially, basically. And as you know, the Stones are so tight,
yeah.
sort of lawyers and everything, you never get anything off them. Well, I guess what's his name?
Yeah.
Verve
Well,
eventually got something
yeah,
from Speech
yeah.
Sinclair.
It's true what you said. It's a shame because it's actually more people love the Soup Dragons version than the sort of like
Well, it's
Rolling
crazy.
Stones
I've heard
original.
on adverts recently, actually, cover versions of it sung by a woman artist. I can't remember who it was, but completely with the Soup Dragons arrangement of it. But of course, because the publishing is the Stones, all the money goes to the Stones, and
Yeah,
Sean,
yeah,
who
that's
did
true.
all the arrangements, and Jim and Shashil and Paul, yeah, no one gets anything apart from sort of
That's a shame.
royalties for radio play. But
Yeah,
so that's a shame.
yeah,
But it's a great, an amazing version
yeah,
and fantastic song. But still, interestingly, linking back to those sort of '60s roots, which we were always very interested in the band at the beginning. You know, we were really into sort of '60s psychedelia, very early Pink Floyd, Sid Barrett, all that stuff, very early
yeah.
Stones and things. So,
Well, Graham said that he loves that Teen Canteen album and the cover looks great. So,
oh,
and
good.
yeah, and Neil said that he prefers Mother Universe to I'm Free. So, but that's sort of like a different, so like the Soup
Yeah,
Dragon.
I remember. I remember with Mother Universe. I remember, you know, when I was still in the band, we would rehearse that, and I remember, in fact,
Okay.
sitting in Jim's house actually, which we didn't.
Yeah, yeah,
We used to rehearse that, and Motherwell, I think, I remember sitting in his bedroom, all playing guitars and singing sort of harmonies on Mother Universe. Actually, I had
yeah,
the way songs evolve and they change, and you know, different from how they're kind of recorded. But
yeah.
so many great. Sean's such a fantastic songwriter. You know, I mean,
Yes,
at
he
the beginning of
massive.
the band,
Yes.
it was just amazing. You know, I've said it before, but you know, he would come in every week with another couple of songs. You know. And just fantastic, you know. And we'd rehearse a lot then, you know. We'd do these big 6 hour rehearsals like 2 or 3 times a week. And, you know, so we were really tight. And so he would bring in a new song, and Jim would get the chords, and, you know, Sheila on the bass, and Sean would have a wee lead bit, and I'd be in there and the kind of drums. It'd just be like 1, 2, 3, 4, bam, bam, bam.
Yeah.
You know, complete, perfect, you know. So he is great. All those songs are fantastic.
Yeah. Well, the reason why I ask you, I think you made the right decision to sort of like get into your art or getting a degree in art because it also sort of like found out that you're one of the key figures in the movement of contemporary artists in Glasgow. I think they call it like Glasgow Miracles, or someone called it that way. but yeah, so the one that I'm going to ask about your art project is Real Life,
Yeah.
which is I was the one that we saw like showed earlier, this Ross in the real lifers. When I saw this at first, I thought that can't be real. That tattoo, it's probably just so like written for the cover for the cover of the
Yeah,
sort like the album. But a that's a real tattoo you've had. That
yeah,
you've got that tattoo, and
yeah.
this. So did you have that before your real life project, or did you start the real life project and then have the tattoo done?
No, I mean, I had the tattoo done in 1994, so almost 30 years ago. And it's a long kind of story, but basically, I knew that a lot of the work I was doing uh, looked formally quite different and different kind of moments. So I was kind of looking for something that would somehow tie it together. Like, so here's a book just with things, but I don't know if you can sort of see how things kind
Oh,
of look sort of different. They're not. There's things kind of have similar sort of ideas going through them, but formally they look quite different. So in a way, I was looking for something that would be a kind of umbrella over the work that I was doing and kind of tie things together in this kind of idea, which was to sort of, I suppose, question the idea of what was real life for me, for you, for everybody collectively, for nationally, internationally, globally, without borders. So, in a way, a lot of the different exhibitions that I've done over the years have sort of tried to kind of ask those questions to different audiences around the world in different exhibitions and different sort of projects that I've done. So, but on more specifically, there was about that same time when I finished studying, I went to CalArts, which is just outside Los Angeles, for half a year to study with a guy there called Thomas Lawson, and he's a Scottish guy who'd been in America since the 70s, but he and his partner Susan Morgan ran this magazine called Real Life Magazine in New York City from the sort of late 70s into the 80s, into just the beginning of the
yeah.
80s for a few years. And it published some of the first sort of works by sort of really interesting kind of New York sort of artists, and it was run by artists. And anyway, they had said they were going to do a final edition of this, number 23, in 94, a couple of years after I'd spent that time in the States. And anyway, we kind of hatched this plan that I said, if they paid for me to have the tattoo made, they could use it on the front cover of the last edition of the magazine, sort of thing. So that's what we did. And it was there on the front of the last edition of this magazine. So in a way, I kind of looked at that as it's been really sort of influential to me, this sort of magazine, and they were closing that. And I'd sort of taken that a little bit of like trying to keep some of the spirit of that sort of artist run, self-determined thing alive. And I kind of started with that when they finished with the magazine. So there's lots of things going on at the time, but yeah, it all kind of happened at the same time. And also I kind of knew that kind of making art and doing this is it's a lifetime kind of, I was signing up for a lifetime of that. So it didn't, having the tattoo made was sort of fine. So for years it just said real life. And I added that is dead about 5 years ago, sort of thing, because it felt like that. Actually, when I did the PhD, I did this on the real life project.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I kind of was reflecting on that and all the works I'd done. And so that sort of, that is dead, to change it to real life is dead, for me, sort of charted a new direction, a new moment where you sort of put a lid on the first 25 years and then kind of move on to the next, well, however many years are left, sort of thing.
So that's always so. After leaving the Soup Dragons, that's become so like your main project, which is real life. Because I was all like thinking, what is that all about? I mean, what is real life? I mean, it's like, is it different for you and different for me, or different for?
I mean, to be honest, I don't have any answers with it. What's been key for me is that every sort of project I've done with it is an attempt to ask that question in a different sort of place or different sort of context.
Yeah.
So I don't know, like there was there's a record from a project I did in China a few years ago, just when I'd had the tattoo made. So it was sort of real life is dead,
Wow.
long live real life. So that was the sort of trying to think about a sort of new way of doing it. There's
Yeah.
just sort of records that made real life Parlidonia, which is a project in Edinburgh where I kind of made all these billboards and posters and different things. You can't really see all these different sort of Aldrich is a kind of local name for Edinburgh. So I had all these different
Oh, see.
statistics of famous painters, famous writers, but also deaths from drugs or kind of housing schemes and things. So it was a bit of a way to kind of have a portrait of that city, but in different ways to think, well, okay,
Yeah.
all the fantastic history of art and culture, that's real, but also housing estates and poverty and, lack of access to that are real as well. So, or this
Yeah.
this one here, which was it was called 20 Years of Real Life. And basically, it was a project where I used lots of the money for the show to give away all these musical instruments to actually, the conceit was that you had to be born after I had had this tattoo made in 1994, which basically meant you had to be a sort of teenager at the time. So basically, this is what it sort of looked like. We had all these sort of musical instruments kind of out in the space, drums, bass guitar, guitars,
Yeah. Yeah.
microphones, PA systems. So we gave away all these musical instruments to there was 5 bands came forward and worked with them for 18 months or a couple of years really
Yeah.
on kind of recording, rehearsing, and in the end we made this record and had a launch of it on nice green vinyl. This one.
Oh, wow. Is that
Uh,
from last night from Glasgow as well, or is it sort of like an?
No, it was done by the gallery collective. It's called in
Yeah.
Edinburgh.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. It's,
Like a lot of these things did a little book that sort of described the sort of process of the whole thing. So I
yeah.
don't know. These are just some of the things I've made, but for me, I don't. The key thing for me is talking to an audience about it. I don't have all the answers at all. So I'm all these different things I do. I try to set that up in some way to engage the audience and to get the
Mhm.
audience to participate because I'm interested in that as well as you know, okay, it's great to go into museums and look at art on the wall that's just there, all done and finished and complete, and the artist is dead and whatever. But
Yeah.
I really like the idea of doing things where people can participate and take part and kind of be part of the work as well.
Yeah.
So
And
that's
that's the sort of like become the real lifers. Because
yeah,
this album that you've got is Ross and the real lifers.
yeah, yeah,
Is it meant
absolutely.
to? Yeah.
No,
Is it?
yeah,
Yeah.
I'm
Go
just
on.
no, well, on the back of that, there's sort of all these little badges, which are just a lot of the people that I worked with on this
Yeah.
record. And, some of them were students of mine, actually, over the years, and some were other artists. And, for example, one song is one that I made it was a show, a group show of artists in Detroit. And I did this song and asked all the other artists to sing on it, and then we made a video at the Gallery of Modern Art in Glasgow and
Yeah.
sent
Yeah.
that out to this show in Detroit, which was a sort of like a postcard from Glasgow somehow over to this, because Glasgow and Detroit have a sort of similar working class history. It's a sort of interesting industrial
Okay.
towns that now have to sort of reinvent themselves in some other way. So. But yeah, the real lifers are just all the different participants over the years. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. It's a nice way to put it.
Well, I do love this album because I mentioned it to you before that it sounded like when you were recording it, you're having a lot of fun. That's such a fun album. There was one, I think it was it's the first track, I think, which is, yeah, real life Glasgow, real life Detroit.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
actually saw the video of that on YouTube as
yeah,
well. And you're playing the guitar, and someone
yeah,
else was doing the drums. But anyways, at the end of it, it sort of like said something like, you were laughing and saying, "I can't sing," and so
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't want
yeah.
to ruin this song or something.
Yeah, of course. Actually, I did play the drums on that. It was just
Oh,
we would,
oh,
yeah.
I was,
I got everybody into everybody sang on it. All the other artists sang on it.
yeah,
And but yeah, we sort of mimed it all for the video. But yeah, all these things are really good fun, and I think having music in the sort of exhibitions that I do, and it's just for me, it's a really nice open way to invite people in to spend a bit more time in the exhibition or think about it in a different way. And just some of these records that I've done, and basically I do lots of things, the CDs and different things. If there's a bit of spare money for something, because I can record things here and that doesn't cost
yeah,
anything. It's my time. I can, if there's a bit of money to make a CD or a record or something, I really like to have
yeah,
that. And if I can give them away, also, it's really good.
yeah.
And
Apparently,
because
this one, yeah, this one that you gave away when they saw like you did an exhibition. So you go into a bus or something, and then
yeah,
you
yeah,
give away a CD for every person. So like when
yeah, that was this one actually. It's called the Real Life Rock Opera, and
oh
it's a sort of mix of Scottish songs and religious songs and real life songs. So it was me. This bus is called the Travelling Gallery. It's a fantastic project. It's like a coach bus, but it's like inside is a gallery. So this
oh
bus
wow.
drives around Scotland to the Highlands and the islands and places where there's no galleries and access to art is kind of difficult. And it parks up and opens up, and quite often they go to a school or a college or a town square somewhere. So yeah, they normally do like a little book or something with each project, because the projects last quite a long time. Like I think that was 4 or 5 months, because they drive around. They have lots of venues. So anyway, I said, hey, instead of doing a book, how about doing a CD or something? I mean, there is a little book in it that's got some bits and bobs of stuff, but
Yeah,
so we did that. But because they have so many visitors to this thing, we actually did 10,000 copies of it. So
wow.
if it had been a chart return, it would have been in the top
It would
five.
be number one,
Well, we just gave them all away instead.
well, you've also sort of like held art exhibitions in China as well.
Yeah.
May I just ask, is there a particular reason why you chose to
Yeah.
do it in China? Or
I mean, like everything else, I suppose with art, like music, it's just so much to do with kind of connections and sort of people you meet along the way and things that happen and like-minded people. And there's a woman who runs the University Gallery in Dundee Art School called Sophia Howe. And she's from China originally. And she was interested to do a project with Scottish artists in China, and she asked me if I wanted to be involved, along with maybe 7 or 8 other artists. And we went to Shanghai for a trip. I think maybe 2014 or something, and to this museum that she had worked with another curator called Wan Naming. It's called Shanghai Himalayas Museum. And so we went for a visit and, had a bit of a tour around Shanghai for
right, yeah,
people. And then over the next few years, she arranged a few different exhibitions actually that happened in all over China in different places. But then a few years after that, 2017, I did a kind of solo exhibition in this museum in Shanghai, which was a kind of like a bit of a sort of retrospective of lots of different works all brought together with some new works and things. So she was really interested, Sophia, in that sort of cultural relationship between Scotland and China, which is kind of
yeah.
under researched and not too much discussed. But there's quite a lot there. But it's interesting. I mean, as you know, it's a difficult context in China. And
Mm-hmm.
for example,
Was there
this
any sort of like the Soup Dragon sort of like involvement? Did you include part of that or?
well, no, I mean, I did this record, but I mean, it's slightly indicative that we got the record pressed and made in China, but at the last minute they decided that you need a sort of like an ISBN number, kind of that's the
Oh,
equivalent in the UK, like a
like a
publication
catalog. Yeah, publication. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
something. And in the end, they didn't give it to us, so we couldn't actually put the music on the record. So we still we still were able to make the records, but we couldn't put the music on them. So it's totally bizarre. We did this run of the records that had nothing on them, so it's this kind of ghost version. But
Oh no.
in the UK, we did another version that had the music on it. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
but no, we didn't. I didn't draw on any Soup Dragons connections then. But I did do a sort of project, a little bit like the one where we gave away the free musical instruments, where I kind of worked. There was a sort of British Council residency thing that was part of it. So I went out for a month to Shanghai that second time and worked. We just kind of invited some local kind of, it was an open invitation through the museum, and we had about 10 or 12 people. I just said, let's start a band and play some songs and do a performance at the opening of the exhibition. So so we did that, and we had, there was a core of about half a dozen in the end who came along, and basically I worked with them for a few weeks. We had some rehearsals, and you know,
Yeah.
we did I Love Real Life and Real Life is Dead. Some of these songs I've written kind of to do with the sort of project. So we played that at the opening of the exhibition, and I called it the sort of Scottish Chinese real life orchestra. So we did this little performance. So that was kind of great fun. But
Yeah, yeah. But do any of your so like students do they know that you're the drummer of the Soup Dragons?
I'm sure some do, but well, as you know, Glasgow and Scotland, and I suppose the UK generally, is very active in music, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So something that happened in the 80s is, I think, rightly so. I think for young people,
Yeah.
it's like it's old history. You know, it's old news. So.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
Aiden said that the art project looks great, and also he's very impressed with the your guitar collection.
oh
So,
yeah.
but, I'm gonna sort of like ask you because I know that you're going somewhere, but and it's getting a bit later now. But with this, the release of these sort of like 10-inch set
Mm,
from God, I forgot what it's called.
delicious.
Precious Precious recordings of
Yeah.
this is yeah, this is really exciting because can I just ask, is there any sort of like plans for the Soup Dragons to maybe, I don't know, maybe just a one-off reunion gig or, you
We,
know?
we were talking about it a bit, but I'm not sure it's going to happen. Maybe we're still talking about it, but it's just, I mean, in a way, it's fantastic because everybody in the band has stayed really sort of creatively active and are doing their own
Yeah,
thing in art and music, and you know, you know, Sean's doing all his DJ stuff, and he's got this
yeah.
great album coming
A
out.
new album, yeah,
David
that's right.
McCallum, and Shashil has all his Future Pilot, AKA things, and Jim with his Snow Goose and Green Peppers and all the different things.
Yeah.
So everybody's kind of busy, and in some ways we really would like to do that, but there's no definite plans as yet. But
I think
we'll
lots of
go
people,
for it.
lots of people would love to see a sort of like a Soup Dragons reunion.
Yeah.
But I think music wise, you've done more albums as a solo doing the real life.
Yeah, that's probably true, actually. Yeah,
Soup Dragons. And before I let you go, I just want to ask you because so like these are drummer questions.
yeah, yeah.
Do you ever so like or when you were in the Soup Dragons, did you twirl? Or do you sort of like do that kind of
Yeah, no, I don't. I don't. Wait a minute.
thing?
Oh no,
No. Oh,
the answer is no.
well, but have you ever had so like any accidents or like disaster, drumming disaster when you were so like? Did you ever fall off your chair or maybe I don't know?
I think everyone's got a few stories like that. I think because I used to kind of I hit the drums very hard, so I was very sort of tough on the drums. So quite often I would break a snare skin, and the kind of roadie, usually a guy called Wee Davis or Graham,
Yeah, yeah.
who were
Is it
original.
during the set? So you break it during the set?
Yeah,
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 while you
and have a spare snare to kind of change it over. Or the other one was because it hit the bass drum so hard that I definitely were a couple of times where I think it was this guy, Wee Davis, who's on Facebook and things. He's great. He's still working, still a stage manager, tech kind of organizer for bands and things. And I think he was saying when I kind of had a night with him recently, there was one gig where he had to sit for the whole gig with his back against the bass drum, just sit on the stage, so that when I was hitting it, it didn't just the drum kit didn't all fall apart, sort of thing. So, um, but yeah, I think there's always some of these sort of spinal tap moments,
Yeah.
where things kind of uh, go wrong. But
Before I ask the other question, Corinne Cervetti or
oh
Cervetti,
yeah, he's a pal.
yeah, she said that she just needs a dash, and thank you to both of you, and I'm really thank you as well for joining us, Corinne. So, well, another question I wanted to ask is, drumming heroes. Do you have any like drumming heroes?
I mean, like everybody else, I think you probably hear it on that first proper Soup Dragons album, This Is Our Art. Like everybody else is kind of slightly obsessed by John Bonham and
Yeah, yeah,
early Led Zepp sound. But I think more recently, I've kind of maybe as you get older, you kind of get a bit wiser. But the kind of drummers that I really like now are just, I suppose, more and more spare and less fancy stuff going on, so that you're
no
really
twirling, no
support.
twirling. It's not like throwing the
No,
sticks.
no, just kind of supporting the song and pushing it forward and kind of keeping it simple. So yeah, no, I think I just got more and more kind of simple. So a guy who I think is absolutely fantastic was Paul Thompson, who was the drummer in Franz Ferdinand, who
Oh,
he left a couple of years ago, and they've got a fantastic new drummer actually, a woman called Audrey Tate, who's brilliant as well. But just when I saw sort of Franz Ferdinand coming up, because I knew them a little bit, and Bob, the bass player, he studied at the art school, and kind of knew him a bit. But when I just kind of saw them developing through those first few albums, I mean, Paul, I just thought he's an absolutely fantastic drummer. I mean, super tight and hits the drums really hard, really kind of angular, sort of post punk kind of feel to everything, but really kind of dancey as well. And he is really. I thought anytime I saw them playing, I thought he's always a really, really great kind of contemporary drummer sort of thing. Taking
yeah,
all
yeah.
these influences from 60s, 70s, 80s, but in a kind of new and way, which I think really drove that band. And really kind of it was more like having another musical instrument in the band rather than just having someone sitting at the back. So
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
Paul's really he always knocks me out anytime I hear him playing. Actually, it was nice. I went to see them at the Hydro in Glasgow just a few weeks ago, and they had a nice moment near the end in one of the songs where they always have a sort of drumming bit in it, where Audrey, the new drummer, came on and they have a sort of bongo thing happening, and Paul came on as well as the old drummer, and they had a sort of moment where they were sort of playing across from each other, and that was really sort of sweet
Oh,
kind of
well,
moment that felt like
yeah,
passing the baton over or something.
yeah. Because you go. I know that you go to a lot of gigs as well. I mean, you're like me. You don't just so. And do you so when you go to a gig, do you normally so like look at the drummers or so,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I
and what
definitely do. I
do.
definitely do that. I mean,
Yeah.
as you say, I mean, I do love guitar as well, but I think because because those first years of playing in the Soup Dragons was all about the drums, of course. I feel that's where my kind of core is. And actually, when I've been recording things in other places when I'm playing guitar, a lot of people say I just play guitar like a drummer anyway. So it's quite,
Oh,
it's quite kind of. Well, I think even when I'm playing guitar, it's a bit like playing the drums as well. So,
it's like Sean Sharman of Jetstream Pony because he was a drummer
all
and now
right.
he's like the guitarist of Jetstream Pony.
Yeah, yeah.
So being a professor, Professor Sinclair, what would be your advice to sort of like aspiring drummers or musicians out there? So,
I think, I mean, if I've accumulated any wisdom over the years, I think, it's just to say to young people that you just have to do exactly the things that you want to do. And, you get lots of advice from everywhere. And, there's a real sort of thing in in kind of education now, in creative education, and about a sort of professionalization of everything and almost a kind of monetization of everything. How can I
um,
make a living out of this? How can I make money out of this? How can this lead to a job or whatever? And of course, that's important. Everybody needs money to live. But I think the only way that you end up making interesting, dynamic, idiosyncratic work, whether that's playing the drums, making art, doing music, is just to do exactly what the hell you want to do, exactly. And I think that's the main advice, listen to
yeah,
advice you get, but you have to kind of find your own way, find your own voice, find your own path through everything that you want to do, and
yeah,
don't do things because you think it's the way somebody else wants to see it or the other way somebody wants to hear it or whatever. So just do exactly what you want to do, and then if things don't work out, then you can at least say that you did exactly what you wanted to
yeah,
do.
yeah,
you know
yeah. If they had to choose between going for doing a band or staying at the uni, staying
yeah.
at university or something like
Well,
that.
I think that's sort of changed a bit now. I mean, obviously, I do still see all the students coming through each year, but I think now that sort of sense of culture is much more porous, and I think it's much easier to do music and do art and do writing and do lots of different things, And I built like this platform here, where you can find ways to put your work in some kind of context that people can engage with it in,
Yeah,
and you don't necessarily need somebody else to invite you to be able to do that, or you don't need to wait to be discovered by somebody. You can do
yeah,
that yourself and get it out there and
that is
build
true.
up a kind of more organic kind of cultural network of things, which I think can be, you know, much more positive and kind of organic and sort of real, to go back to the
Yeah,
real,
yeah, yeah,
and okay, you need, don't get me wrong, you need money to do stuff as well and to make things happen and to do recording and to make art, whatever. But um, I think you don't need to wait around for somebody else to tell you that it's okay to do it, and I think obviously that was came through the '60s and punk and everything, so there's nothing new about that. But I think what is a bit newer now is that actually there's all these different ways of making that public at the moment that
yeah,
can be.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Modern technology is like
yeah,
enable is sort of like
but also, just to go back to the new Soup Dragons record, on Last Night from Glasgow. I mean, as I say, when I did the cover for that first Teen Canteen record, they just started and they decided to have this sort of subscription service, as you mentioned, where you pay a little bit every year and you get everything that the label puts out, you know, and
Yeah, yeah,
it's really a sort of support thing. And now,
yeah,
like 5 or 6 years later, you know, they're now the label is pressing. I can't remember the Ian who runs it. Um, he posted recently about the amount of records. I think he said that they'd shipped the same amount of records in 1 week of 2023 than they did in the first year of the whole thing kind of going. So now
yeah,
I mean, it's a wee bit, it's like 70, 80 quid a year or something. And, you know, from that, you get like a dozen albums and some
yeah,
singles, access to gigs. And, you know, I really, that's a new model of things where it's kind of local, but, you know, they have all these different reissues and things. So it's kind of international as well. And, you know, you support that thing and you can sort of be
yeah.
part of it. And okay, a lot of it's sort of mail order, but now they have this nice little shop as well, Big Blue, where you can go. I think you went to visit, didn't you?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
brilliant shop. You know, I like that one. And I think another thing, because I saw an interview with Ian, who runs Last Night from Glasgow, and you're not just supporting the label, you're also supporting the artists that are on Last
Yeah.
Night from Glasgow. Because yeah, because according to him, it's not just making him rich or so it's not just all his business, it's the artists as well, like
Yeah.
Trashy
No, not
Sinatra's.
at all. I mean, you know, it actually compare even like, you know, your average indie labels who is maybe 50-50% wise after things, you know, compared to like a major label where you maybe on like 15% or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's
And
right. Yeah,
last
yeah,
night from Glasgow, basically they cover all the expenses and things, and then all the sort of profit goes to the artist. So it's absolutely artist centric and
yeah,
supports the
that's
artist,
right. Yeah, yeah,
enables them to, you know, hopefully get one record out and then, you know, have the funds to record another one. And so in that sense, it's a really interesting kind of model of
model. Yeah, that's
yeah,
right.
how
Yeah,
to, so, you know, it's certainly there's digital and there's online things, but I like something that last night for Glasgow that it functions in that digital sense as well, of course, but it's also a very kind of hands-on, you know,
yes,
practical
that's
thing.
right.
You can go and meet somebody and go to a gig and
Yeah,
meet everybody and, you know, probably get on the bill as a support act as well if you really want to, because it's very accessible and kind of
that's
open.
right.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, different models of doing things. And, you know, just, I know we mentioned it, but just to say again, I mean, I know you mentioned these things, but they're really fantastic. And I just wanted to
they
give
are.
a bit of a shout out to Nick Godfrey from Precious, you know, who put all these things together. And, you know, for him, it's been an absolute labor of love. And, you know, I've kind of found a lot of um,
The postcards that are in there,
yeah,
absolutely amazing. I've not seen those photos before.
they're so great. You know, he spent a lot of time, and you know, I had some contacts for some of the old photographers back in the day, and he found other ones. But of course, we had to pay a bit, and it wasn't a great deal, but it all mounts up, you know. And he first of all paid to get all the things licensed from the BBC, which isn't cheap, and then he paid for all the photos and things. And yeah, we did. He used to do them. You know, you probably saw some. There's a sort of double single thing, a wee bit like a kind of gatefold thing, a bit like this.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we were the first to do them in this sort
The
of
10-inch.
inch, which I really
Yeah,
like actually.
I
But
do like 10-inch as well. Yeah, yeah.
he's a great guy, you know, and that's a great wee label that he set up to do these sort of you know, BBC sessions. And you know, as I say, I think it's really a labour of love from him because you know, I don't think anybody's really making any money out of these things because they're really quite expensive to put together. But you know,
Yeah,
he's done all the work on that, and that's another kind of model of something. If you know, somebody really wants to do something and you know, make it happen, and you know, it was
yeah,
great actually at the Glasgow's Pop, you know, that he came up and he had a little stall with some of the records on it they produced and things.
yeah. That's right. Yeah,
And
yeah.
Jay, actually, did you hear that the Glasgow's Pop thing will happen next year as well again?
And that's actually my last question for
All
you as
right.
well. Are you going to Glasgow Spot this year?
Yeah, I'd really liked it. I mean, I can't remember why now, but I couldn't go on the Saturday. So I was sad. I
You
missed
mean the
sort of
Friday? It was
the
a
Friday.
Friday, was the
Yeah,
first day. Yeah,
I
yeah.
missed June Brides, and
The Orchids.
yeah, it was
Oh,
actually
yeah.
one of the other second or third Soup Dragons gig was supporting June Brides at Splash One a few weeks later, I think, from the Primal Scream gig. So I always really loved June Brides, but sadly missed them. But yeah, next year definitely love to go again.
Oh,
And
this
really,
year.
it's
It's this
this year,
year. Yeah.
yes.
It's in July, the end of July.
Oh,
It's
I
going
know.
to.
I really like that venue as well, the GUU. It's
Yeah, yeah.
I've
Yeah,
never.
I do love that place, and it's just so relaxed that you can actually sort of like go up, like go to Ross
Yeah,
Sinclair and sort of like say, "Excuse me, are you?"
yeah. It's no really nice fun.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna bring all these records with me, and hopefully, I'll see you there in July, and then get it
Yeah,
signed and everything.
yeah, of course.
And I'm really hoping that someday you're gonna do this reunion, even if it's wherever it is. I'm gonna be there to all like see you. So, but anyways, yeah, thank you so much. I'm sorry, so like I know I said we're only gonna do it for about an hour, but we, so
It's
like,
fine. It's been a real pleasure, and honestly, really nice. So thank you for inviting me.
oh,
Really
well,
nice.
thank you so much. Thank you, and
Hope people uh, tuning in for all the drumming tips didn't feel too shortchanged with all the guitar stuff.
well, thank you so much, Ross.
Right.
So, yeah, I
So,
mean, Professor
yes.
Sinclair, thank you very much,
All
and
right.
I'll see you hopefully
Yeah.
in July
See you at
or
the next
sooner.
gig
Oh
somewhere.
no, wait, because there's I don't know if you're going to Hungry Beat. Are you going to Hungry Beat in February?
I
Maybe.
can't, unfortunately. I have to. I'm on the board of an art gallery in the Orkney
Oh,
Islands. They have a board meeting the same weekend, so
oh,
I have
is it okay? Well, I'll see you
it
in
looks like a
July.
great gig. I'm sorry to miss that one. Actually, it's
Yeah, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. It's
yeah, it's a
like
great book. Actually, yeah,
the
yeah,
all the Scottish sort of like names were gonna be in there. So
yeah, yeah. And
so
it's the first one I've seen that has Davy Henderson from Fire Engines as part of the band. I saw one of the launch at Monorail, and they had put together a really nice band with Campbell Owens and
yeah, yeah.
Kate Burke,
Douglas
I thought,
McIntyre and yeah, yeah.
great. But this is the first one where Davy Henderson's, I think, involved. So Fire Engines were always one of my favourite bands. So I'm really sorry to miss that. I don't know
Wow,
what we're doing.
it's a shame.
Use me, hopefully.
It's almost like the same thing. You have to decide whether it's art or so
Absolutely.
you're choosing art again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thank you so much. Thank you,
Pleasure.
Ross, and I'll see you in
Yep.
July. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed.
If not before.
Okay. All right.
All
Bye
right.
for now. Bye. Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Oh, thank you so much. Oh my God, it's so lovely. I'm really glad that we finally got to do the interview on Ask the Drummer because we tried last year, but so like all the schedule problems and everything. But he's absolutely amazing. I'm really looking forward to all the Soup Dragons fans out there. Let's keep our fingers crossed that hopefully there will be a reunion. So like someday, maybe if not this year, maybe next year. But because they're all like he said, they're also like active in music and art and everything. So yeah, really hope for the best. But anyways, thank you all so much for joining us live, and please do keep an eye out for a guest announcement post for next week. And enjoy the rest of your Sunday, the rest of the weekend, what's left of it. And I always say, love music, love life, love, love, love drummers. We've seen Professor Ross Sinclair. He's so lovely. So, yeah, I'll see you all again next week. Bye for now. Bye. Bye.